I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. How are you, everyone? Welcome to the Gathering Room. I'm Martha Beck. If you don't know that, I'm not. You must be in the wrong place. I'm not going to waste time talking about myself because today we have the most magnificent special guest we could ever hope to have. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor may be familiar to you, partly because I talk about her all the time, partly because her TED Talk is probably the most downloaded of all time. It discusses how, as a Harvard neuroanatomist at the age of 37, Jill had a massive left hemisphere stroke, which took out a lot of her cognitive function for a number of years, but she rebuilt her brain. I'll let her tell you how, and came out of the experience with a really transcendent worldview, which I was just saying to her before we started. I believe that this world needs a transformation of human consciousness. And Jill is one of the first people I'd ever seen who I thought, oh my goodness, this is someone who's genuinely done it, knows how it works because she's a brain scientist, and can teach the rest of us from both an intellectual perspective and an emotional experiential one. So I am so deeply honored to welcome Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm so happy to be with you. I'm so happy to be with you.
Oh, the happiness is all mine. Oh, by the way, guys, we will not be taking questions from you this time because I have populated my little field here with all the questions that I think you might ask, but I want to get all my questions in. Before we even say anything, I want to feature Jill's amazing new book, Whole Brain Living. I've read it 3 times. It is such an accessible guide to brain science from a user's perspective. Like, it will teach you how to use your brain differently. And that's all I'm going to say about it before I turn over the mic and ask you, Jill. It still feels awkward to call you that. I want to call you Dr. Bolte Taylor. So, Jill, can you briefly just tell us a little bit about what you discovered by having this massive stroke and rebuilding it, and then very in brief strokes what you've written up in Whole Brain Living?
Beautiful. Thank you. First of all, I'm thrilled to be with you. I have been reading Path to Integrity, and I feel like we're saying the exact same thing, but you're coming at it from a sociological population perspective, and I'm coming at it from the population of cells. And the beauty of cells is that it is the microcosm of the macrocosm. So absolutely. I feel like I'm talking to the macrocosm of what I know so well, and I love it. So first of all, I'm thrilled to be with you.
Thank you so much. So you lost a lot of the function in the left hemisphere of your brain. Now, I was raised thinking we have a hippocampus and an amygdala.
Yes.
You told me we have 2 of each, one on the right and one on the left, and that they function differently. Could you sum that up a little bit?
Yes. And that's actually why I wrote the book. Was I realized I'd had so first of all, I was a brain scientist at Harvard, teaching and performing research. My area of specialty was, how does our brain create our perception of reality?
Wow.
So at a cellular level, I was looking at which cells communicate with which cells, with which chemicals, and in what quantities of those chemicals, and comparing the tissue of normal control to schizophrenia, schizoaffective, OCD, panic, anxiety.
Right.
And there was a lot of meaning in my life because I have a brother diagnosed with schizophrenia. So that's what motivated me to study this all together. And then at the age of 37, I woke up one day and I had a major hemorrhage in the left half of my brain. And over the course of 4 hours, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. I became an infant in a woman's body. And the left brain is all about communicating with the external world. But in the absence of that, I didn't have language. I didn't have the group of cells that define the boundaries of where I begin and where I end, my ego center. I lost all details of everything. I didn't know what a mother was, much less who my mother was. Wow. But it wasn't just what I lost, because I also lost the inhibition, the inhibitory fibers from my left hemisphere reaching over to my right hemisphere. And in the absence of my individuality and the boundaries of where I began and ended, I became as big as the universe, and I felt as though I was a fluid instead of a solid. And it was beautiful there. And it sounds horrible, but it was magnificent. And so I really took 8 years then for me to regain the skills of my left brain. And then, this book is whole brain living, based on, we have 2 emotional groups of cells and we have 2 thinking groups of cells, one in each hemisphere. And they're not just groups of cells, but they have character profiles. Yeah. So the title of the book is Whole Brain Living, The Anatomy of Choice, and the 4 characters that drive our life, because we have the power to choose which of those 4 characters we want to exhibit at any moment in time.
Wow, this is so fascinating. So it's so exciting. Most of the people who come here to the gathering room have talked about, well, they've asked questions about anxiety, about how to deal with overwhelm, about trying to deal with relationships. And as I read your book, I thought these people are existing or seem to be operating primarily out of that left hemisphere set of cells. And you, when you moved over to the right side, and you said that so beautifully in your TED Talk, step to the right, you said you not only felt this immensity, but also the oneness, the things that actually Asian mystics and also European mystics have described, and for that matter, shamans all over the world have described going into through a variety of spiritual practices. So what your book and what your experience taught us is that this is an actual thing that it exists in the brain, and we can go into it. And your TED Talk was at the same time so viscerally awful and so beautiful. And I've been obsessed with this for like a decade, ever since I saw it. Tell us about the beauty, and then and the absence of anxiety, and then why it was bad to miss that, and how to balance the two so that we have this whole brain living going on.
So every ability we have is because we have brain cells that perform that function. So I can wiggle my finger because I got a group of cells right here. I can speak because I have cells that create sound and then understand sound. So every ability we have. So if we're able to have a spiritual experience, it's because we have cells that are designed to have that performance. So the question is, how do we access it? And many of the tools that we currently use are prayer. Because in prayer or in mantra or in meditation, we're either trying to quiet that brain, or in the left hemisphere, the language centers, or we're trying to shift our focus away from that. It's rare that it's going to go completely quiet, but it's like little children in there. It's like, if you want them to be quiet, treat them with respect. Say, I'm right here. You can come up anytime that you want, but I'd like to go be at one with all that is. And it's going, if your brain knows your 4 characters, then you gain the power to choose moment by moment which of those 4 characters you want to embody. And you can create healthy relationships inside your own head between those characters.
That's so fascinating. And I love that she has characters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Simple. And they each have, I talked before on the gathering room about how you asked the readers of the book to name their 4 parts. And when you got to the creative, playful part, I was like, what'll I name mine? I know, I'm going to name it Pig Pan after that Peanuts character. And then I was listening to your book on audio. You said, I named mine Pig Pan. And I was like, do we have the same, right? Emotional brain. But could you tell the folks here, because I know that a lot of people come here because they struggle with chronic anxiety that they can't get past.
Yes.
First of all, do you remember what you were like before the stroke? Do you remember your personality? What were you like?
So, I only lost 2 of my characters. Sorry, I'm sweating like a pig because I live where it's hot. So let me just wipe my face down.
On a boat, by the way.
On a boat, on the water. It is hot here. So, I Well, I grew up very right brain dominant as a child. I was very artistic, very creative, very musical, very athletic, and I was happy like that. And
Mm.
my mother was an academic, and my brother, who ended up being diagnosed with schizophrenia, was just this side of genius. So he
Mm.
was satisfying all of my parents' needs for an intellectual child.
Oh,
So I didn't
interesting.
have to, which was really great for me because then I could like pursue my music, pursue my art, pursue my athletics. And
Mm.
then I went to college. And in college, I absolutely fell head over heels with anatomy, in love with
Mm.
anatomy. And so I became a gross anatomist, which is cadaver lab. We're so beautiful. There's nothing more beautiful than teaching medical students about the beauty of the body.
Mm.
And if you're going to do research in this day and age, you have to go to the brain. So I went
Yeah.
to the brain for neuroanatomy for my research. And so that all developed. And then I'm climbing the Harvard ladder and doing all of that. There's a lot of meaning in my life because I'm working on schizophrenia, which
Mm.
is, to help my brother. And then I wake up one day and the left hemisphere falls
Oh.
offline, but I have this very healthy two characters in my right brain of the present moment. And the
Mm.
biggest difference between the left brain and the right brain is the present moment. The right brain is right here, right now. That's all there is. Information streaming in through our sensory system saying, hey, what do I see? What am I smelling? What's going on? And it's like this massive collage of
Mm.
magnificence. But I lost language. People thought that was important. I lost my relationships. People thought that was important. I lost my job. People thought that was important. But
Oh, imagine that.
I know, but in the absence of that, I just felt open and expansive and filled with just endless love. And it
Yeah.
was beautiful. Everything's connected. And I was really happy. And my mother would look at me on the couch and she'd say, child, she called me child, why are you so happy? Here I am. I'm drooling. Half of me's paralyzed. I'm a real mess. But all I had was the magnificence of life. And it was like, I didn't die that day. I
Mm.
didn't die. So I retained those two characters of the character of emotion and the character of right thinking, which
Mm.
is connected to all that is. But
Yeah.
I lost the emotion of the past and the future, fear of the future. And I lost the thinking of the past and all of my memories
Yeah.
and any projection into the future. So, I feel very fortunate that I lost my left hemisphere instead of my right hemisphere.
Yeah.
And then I could use my right hemisphere to rebuild my left hemisphere.
Amazing. So if somebody's stuck in a place of anxiety and they haven't really had any relationship with these right hemisphere characters, and you talk about a brain huddle, bringing them all together.
Yes.
But I'm sort of harping on this because I get the question so frequently. I'm
Yes.
stuck in anxiety. I've never felt peace. And I always tell
Right.
people that your refuge is the present moment. If you can shrink
Yes.
time, if you can
Yes.
stop your linear time perception.
Yes.
But I still keep getting the question from the same people.
Right. They don't know
So
what that means. How do I
if
bring myself to the present moment? What does that mean?
Yeah, and so do
Yeah.
you still are there times ever now where you feel flickers of anxiety or something
Yeah.
like that, and you move over, you deliberately decide,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to choose to go to the
Yeah.
right now?
Yes. So because I know, okay, so let's go through the four characters really quickly. So people
Yes,
know what they have to choose from
great,
because little character 2 is that emotion of anxiety. So
right.
if I want to get out of anxiety, it's like all the energy in my brain has gone to that group of cells.
Yeah.
And so now I'm in anxiety and it's going to run its course of time. And from the moment I think a thought till it stimulates an emotional circuit and then it runs a physiological response to what I'm thinking and feeling, that literally takes less than 90 seconds.
Wow.
So, first of all, recognize anything I'm feeling, whether it's love, whether it's sadness, whether it's joy, whether it's whatever, anxiety, it is only running for 90 seconds. Now, I can stay anxious longer if I keep thinking the thoughts
Right.
and stimulate those emotions in the present, or I can change my mind and I can think about something else. So, character 1 is the left thinking tissue. This is the part of us that organizes everything. It is punctual. It defines what is right and wrong, what is good and bad. And it's our A-type personality. It got us here. I got everybody who's here on time today. So that's character one. And we all need that character one because that's a part of us that is really interacting with the external world. And it's a magnificent part of who we are. We're completely non-functional without it. So that's character one. Character two is the emotions from the past. So any of our past trauma is in that group of cells. It's literally in a group of cells. So for me, when mine went offline, it was fantastic. Those cells, all of my pain from the past disappeared and never came back online. Now I could think and remember traumas, but I didn't have the emotional response to it. So that's all located in little character two. Little character two is the part of ourselves that we really need to listen to. We need to learn how to self-soothe and how to love that part of ourselves. We need to figure out who stimulates or triggers that part of ourselves and really pay attention, because this is circuitry. Every ability we have is cells and circuits. So if I'm putting all my energy into my character two, I could decide, okay, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to make a phone call. I'm going to stop thinking about the anxiety thing. I'm going to distract myself, if you will. I'm going to go into character one, or little character three is in the right brain. And that's the emotion of the present moment. Well, how do I get into the present moment? Well, first of all, I focus on my breath because it's the first thing I do when I'm born and the last thing I'm going to do when I die. And it's like, it's here. And isn't it nice that it's here and we don't have to like remind ourselves to do it all the time? So just bring your mind to thinking about your breath. And all of a sudden, bam, here I am. And then I'm present. And what does it feel like experientially to be present? What does that mean? What does it feel like to have my clothing on? How much of the humidity is in the air? And how does it feel to be sweating? Now, my character one is making judgment going, oh my gosh, I'm sweating on a podcast. It's like, my character three doesn't care at all. It just
I'm sweating like a hog over here, Jill.
Exactly. It's just the way we are. So the character three is an experiential, not so much the emotional. Now it can be the anger of the present moment. And I love in how your book, you talk about the different types of anger, and the different types of anger are specifically divided between those two hemispheres. The right here, right now is saying, no, I don't want that. I want change. That's not okay with me. Where the left can become violent. So I love the way you delineate those two differences. And then character three is very playful. It's creative. It's open. It's innovative, because it doesn't have the left brain coming in and say, no, if you're going to color those trees, you need to make them green. And I know you're a painter, so your trees can be blue. It's okay. So, because to the right brain, there is no right and wrong and good and bad. It just is what it is. And then character four is the thinking tissue inside of our brain. And that is the present moment experience of being connected to all that is. There is a consciousness in every cell in our body, and that consciousness is shared with the consciousness of the cosmos. And we have access to that character. How do we do that? We practice. You have to become aware of what are you thinking. You have to be willing to be aware of paying attention to what circuits are you running. But think about your brain as though it is a collection of cells, and we have the power to choose which of these characters we want to embody in any moment.
Oh, this is so amazing. And it's so great for me to hear this from somebody who was at Harvard, because when I was there, which is like 500 years ago now, the way to get yourself like laughed out of the room was to admit that you had even the slightest openness to the thought of a spiritual aspect to the universe. And when I read Whole Brain Living, I was like, she's just out there with it. And that's what the gathering room is. It's me saying, I'm interested in the intersection between science and spirituality. I believe in it. So like the sociological implications of your discovery, like the way you're living now, I doubt you would have gone there just going up through the ranks at Harvard, because the socialization
I'd still be there doing that.
I know, freezing cold, right? In many ways. So
Yeah.
did you decide like, okay, I really don't care that the people I know at Harvard are going to think I'm, on the loopy end, or like, how did you deal with that?
Well, I became loopy. I mean, I lost my left hemisphere. Everybody knew I was an infant in a woman's body. So, my left brain, it would care. My right brain,
Mm.
it didn't care at all. All my right brain cared about was that I'm still alive. I'm still
Wow.
alive. And as long as I have life, I have possibility. And it all begins with the try. It
Yeah.
all begins with the try. But the value structure of the right brain is about the collective whole. How do I use my life to make a contribution to the bigger picture of humanity? So
Yeah.
here you are, you're looking at the sociological perspective of humanity, and I'm looking at it from a cellular at the level of the brain. So to
cool.
me, and I always say to people, if you want to understand the brain, understand sociology, because that's the macrocosm. So cells are in circuits just like humans are. And if cells get cut off from their circuitry and their network, they curl up in a ball, and most of the time they die, or they wait until other cells come in to bring them back into the network.
Wow.
So to me, it's the this and the that, and the cells are this magnificent creation. And then we project that into the world, and our patterns then from what's going on inside the brain get projected into our patterns into the external world behaviorally.
Yeah. And then they form sociological phenomena that are similar to what's going on in the individual brain of the person who's having most influence. This is exactly how I've always thought about it, but I don't have the brain science behind me. So talking to you is like, yes, this is exactly what I thought. I have another question about this, though, because one of the ways in which we project our brain state into the world is in the choice of how we build the life. And this is the other part of what I do. I do the writing, and then I do coaching. And the coaching grew out of teaching and having people show up and ask me, don't tell me about the subject matter, tell me how to live. And I was like, really? So you were just telling me before we went live about how you've shaped your own life. And you said, I'm so blessed. And I kept thinking, but you've made choices. It's the anatomy of choice, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And so not only do you make a choice to stay in the present moment and not get into anxiety spirals or whatever, but then you've made choices in your external life that you have a very unusual lifestyle. Which is such a magnificent reflection of your inner lifestyle. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I live on a boat. I live on a boat 6 months of the year in the southeast of the U.S. And I absolutely love it. I come here at the beginning of May, and I stay as long as I absolutely can take the weather. And so really till November. So I am podcasting with you from my boat, which I of course call Brainwaves. And I'm happy here. I have created the world, the life that I want, and I live with God. My character 4, I didn't die that day, but what I really gained was this clear awareness of who is that part of me that is connected to all that is, and that is love, and that is, how do I be of service? How do I bring myself into the world to the best of my ability? And when I live on water, I'm on about 50 feet of water where I currently am, and to me, it's like my energy bubble becomes complete. And when I come out into the world, which of course I do for gigs and conversation and keynotes or whatever, I feel like my energy comes down and hits the cement and splatters with everybody else's splatter.
I know how
and
that
so
is.
there's a level of crazy in our world that is not peaceful. And for me, this book is like a roadmap to how to get out of your own anxiety, your own crazy energetic that is uncomfortable, our fear of the past, our fear of the future, our disappointment, our our expectations of everything, our judgment from the social norm, and really land in ourselves. Who are we? Who am I. And it's funny that the I of a collective whole is in the right hemisphere, where the I, the
Mm,
ego, the individual, what serves me the best, and how do I rate compared to instead
mhm.
of in common with, in
Yeah.
relationship with. So I make choices every day. I am constantly aware of my own mindset,
Yeah.
and I know what brings me anxiety. I don't like anxiety. In your book, you say, write this down. This is what bothers me. This is what I need from you instead. Absolutely. It's about owning your power as a human being. And we do have to fit into a social norm,
Mm,
and up to a certain point. And as long as
yeah.
we're loving and we're supportive of others, then, the society is pretty good with it. So you also say in there that the more integrity we gain, the more weird we become, and the less we do with the social norm. And it's like, yeah, I'm kind of in that category. So I mean, look where I live, So, but at the same time, it's all about love. It's all
Yeah.
about, how do I use me, the value of the right hemisphere, and to contribute to the collective whole, which is us as humanity, all animals, the planet. We're a symbiotic relationship,
Yeah.
and the left hemisphere doesn't have that value. The left hemisphere says
Mm,
it's about me and mine. There's a hierarchy. How much can I achieve in the external world? It thinks linearly, which means, where am I on that hierarchy? And it's
yeah.
very materialistic.
Yeah.
So we choose. We have all of it inside of ourselves.
Yeah. And around us. I mean, I know a lot of people might be thinking, well, I wish I could have an idyllic life on a boat 6 months of the year. And the fact is, you probably could. If
Yeah.
in my integrity book, I say, here's the thing: if you live exactly according to the integrity that you're talking about, Jill, as you
Right.
find your way through the choices that are best for
Right.
you, it will give you everything that you need to be happy. Absolutely
Yeah.
everything. But it may
Yeah.
cost you everything else.
Yeah.
So this is what I
Uh,
want people to notice: that you aren't just
yeah.
like some rich woman with a yacht. You are a person who deliberately stepped away from
Yes.
the types of achievement, even though you're still achieving like a mad thing. I mean, this is crazy good. But you stepped away from the academia
Yeah.
style of life. You stepped away from that physical location. You stepped away from land. As you were thinking, as you were talking, sorry,
I
I get very
did.
excited. I was
Yeah.
thinking, cells have to be in water to live. Like water is the one thing.
Ah. Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I love the wilderness myself, and I love getting away from other people. But if
Yeah.
there's no water around at all,
Right.
it gets very grating on me. So
Yeah.
there's something very literal almost about us living as if we were individual cells of a common brain. It's
Right.
really fascinating. But I
Right.
just want people to know, you said you were blessed, but in fact, you have made choices.
Yes.
Yeah, and your
Yes. I
book
have
is
built
about
this world.
choices. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I have made this life. This is, I asked myself, I lost both my mom and dad in 2015. And it was like, well, where do I want to be? Where do I want to grieve? And it was this lake in this place where my family would come when I was a child. So I can get on a paddleboard and go where my mom and I would sleep out on the boat and rock. And it was like, and my dad was an oil painter. So I can picture where dad was out there painting. So it was really the perfect place for little Jill to come in order to grieve. And the beauty of emotions, even if it's anxiety, the beauty of emotions is it's the difference between being alive and not being alive.
Hmm.
And even if I can celebrate the negative emotions, or what we would define as negative emotions, then it's a part of what we are. It's the beauty of what we are. But again, it's cells and circuitry, and it has a natural lifespan. I don't have
Hmm.
to keep rethinking the thoughts that are going to keep me in my anxiety. Grief is an overwhelming, totally enveloping, most beautiful, amazing, put me on the floor and let me weep. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like, oh my God, I'm alive. And this is the difference between me being alive and me not being alive, is my ability to feel and to be and to think and to speak and to see. Oh my gosh, we're just like, we're this amazing miracle of life, amazing miracle of life. And when we allow ourselves to hook into that perspective, how can I be anything but wow, bring it on, whatever it is.
Yeah, I always think that we are somehow consciousness struggling to be at peace with existing inside matter. Yes. And the understanding of that matter now, because of brain scientists like you, has gone further than it's ever been before. And it's merging with the wisdom traditions and the mystical traditions of cultures all over the world. And Jill Bolte Taylor stepped through that door years ago.
Oh, I got thrown.
Got thrown through the door. The door slammed and then ripped off its hinges and beaten with it. But she came out just with everything, with this beautiful manifestation of consciousness in form and this amazing ability to describe how to do what she did the hard way. But we can do it a much easier way. So if you ever think, oh, this is hard, think about doing it Jill's way and choose what's available by reading her book.
What's available. And once you get to know these 4 characters and then they start having conversations inside of your own head, it's like, oh yeah, if I'm feeling anxious, I can say to my little character 2, I give them all names. And my little character 2, I call her Abby. And the rest of me, character 1 can come online. Her name is Helen, Hell on Wheels, get it done. She's busy. So Helen can step in when I'm feeling anxious or feeling unhappy and essentially say, do I need to fix something? Because that's what that character does. Do I need to fix something? Are we physically okay? And then character 4 can come online, and that's the love. And it's like, oh, honey, we're here. All the energy is in you right now, but the rest of us, we're all here. And then character 3, my Pigpen, your Pigpen, wants to play and be creative. So eventually Pigpen comes on and goes to Abby and says, okay, can we go play now? And we create healthy relationship inside of your head. And it's beautiful. These are your 4 characters. And, it's like differentiation. The better we differentiate anything, the better we can know how to use it or work with it or develop whatever we want.
That is brilliant. I think we're going to just, that's a mic drop moment. We're going to close out for the week, but we've had comments saying, please bring her back soon. So I hope this is not our last meeting on the Gathering Room.
Perfect.
And you are always such a joy and an inspiration, and your energy as well as your brilliant mind just lift all of us. So Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Mwah.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, everybody.
Can we all go play now?
Yeah, it's playtime now. I got to go jump in the lake.
Okay.